Well, I think I'm going to make a start. I think we've got quite a packed agenda, so we don't want to kind of get behind. A very big welcome. My name is Sue Farrington, and I'm president of the Federation of European Scleroderma Associations. But before we get going, I want to call up Alba from the Advocates team, who I can just see in the background, because she's going to do the air hostess duties of taking us through housekeeping. There are a number of things to share. Is Alba around? Is Alba in the house? She's here. And she's just going to take you through some housekeeping things and tell you about an exciting competition that we've got.
Thank you, Sue. Welcome, everyone. The first thing I want to say is there's some free space in the front rows. Please feel free to move to the front of the room. So I want to just highlight a couple of things on housekeeping. So as you're aware, we have headsets for translation. And we're going to have, can you not hear it? Can we put it up a little bit, the sound, please? Can you hear me better now? There you go. So you have headsets. We have translation available for Spanish, Hungarian, Czech, and German. We're going to have as well a headset for the moderators. So when you have questions, please feel free to ask them in your native language, and the translator will be able to report back to the rest of the team. And we want to as well thank the translators in the back room for their job for the next couple of days. During the session, we're going to have some coffee breaks, so you can feel free at any time to pop outside and get a refresher. Today, we're going to have lunch at 12 o'clock in the Zoom room, which is outside to the right, and we will be guiding you later on. For those of you who have registered for the patient dinner tonight, it's at 7 o'clock at Candelabra, and you should have a ticket with your badge. If you registered and you don't have the ticket, please reach out to some of our staff team, which you can see there. That's Nina, Gina, and Linda on the background. So we are here to help you with anything you need, so please feel free to just pop up and ask. We have as well a video and imagery team, and we're going to be taking some pictures. So if you want any one particular pictures, you want to get a nice headshot, you can let us know as well. We can do that for you. And we're going to have Q&A sessions, not for the introduction, but the moderators will explain later on as well how the Q&A is going to work. And that's it for me. I'm going to hand over to Sue. The picture competition. So we have a contest for the picture with the most likes. So we want to encourage you to take pictures on social media, tag FESCA in any of the social media channels, and make sure you use the hashtag SSC World Congress, and then we will choose the best one, and the one with the most likes gets a trip to the next Congress covered by FESCA in 2026. So I think that's a good incentive for everyone. I want to wish you a very nice conference. Enjoy and make the most of it. Thank you very much. And over to Sue.
Well, I am really delighted that we have finally made it to Prague. As many of you may know, we did plan to be here in 2020, but 4 years later, we finally made it to this really beautiful city. And what better backdrop could we have for our conference? This is just the perfect view. So, what we're going to have over the next 2 days, because we are based with the Clinical Congress, is access to some of the world-renowned specialists, both clinicians and researchers. So the talks that we will have over the next 2 days will pull in those experts, but there's also other experts, and that's you. That's you as patients. And every session will have a patient speaker. We will have patients moderating the sessions, because I think one of the things that I mentioned in the opening speech yesterday is that we will only be successful when we are truly collaborating together. We need to hear all voices. We need to understand everybody's challenge if we are really going to drive forward the agenda that we want, which is to get access to better treatments and better care. We need to understand the challenges from all of our stakeholders, most importantly, patients and your unmet needs. But we also need to hear what are the challenges in research, what's missing, what needs to happen, and from industry as well. And in terms of regulation, once we have a treatment that's been approved, how do we make sure we get that to market as fast as possible? So we once again will have a round table, and that's going to be after this opening session, where we will have industry and patient representatives talking about the importance of patient voice, patient engagement, and the involvement of patient organizations throughout the development of the whole drug life cycle. So this really is also an opportunity for you to share your experiences. We want you to be as engaged as possible. So please don't be shy, ask questions. There's no such thing as a stupid question. You can bet that if you've got a question in your mind, there will be somebody else there who is thinking exactly the same thing. So I really would encourage you, don't be shy, ask questions. So in March 2020, Ilaria, Galetti, who's the vice president of FESCA, and myself were formally approved by the board. Now, some might say that couldn't have been a worse time to take on that role. As you know, everything shut down. But I think we were determined as a group and as the FESCA board that we really wanted to plough forward. So we made the best opportunities of being online, like many people who took to their bedrooms to be on 24/7 Zoom calls. And I'm really, really appreciative to our membership and to our community, because one of the first things that we did was to reach out to you and say, what are your challenges? What are your unmet needs? We need to understand this if we are to shape a strategy to help move everything forward. And you were amazing. You came back, you shared your experiences. And this made us think that one of the aspects of the work that we've been doing, we really needed to ramp up, and that was the advocacy work. And if you've been following us on social media, you will know that over the last 2 years, we've been in the European Parliament, sharing our reports, sharing our findings. So those challenges that we identified in 2020, we wanted to really develop a better understanding. So in 2023, we launched a patient survey. It went out in 20 countries. It was translated into 15 languages, and we had over 1,200 responses. And what that did was really to give us some kind of alarming insight into the state of play across Europe. And what we found was that 50% of people were waiting up to 5 years for a diagnosis. 50% indicated that having systemic sclerosis impacted on their ability to work. It meant often that within 5 years of diagnosis, people either had to go part-time or retire. And over 60% said it had a major impact on their mental health and well-being. And these are often aspects that don't come into the conversations with physicians. One of the things we hear time and time again from patients is that actually, when they meet with their physicians, they want to be treated as a person. They want that conversation to look at them as an individual and to understand where they are in their lives. Because actually, having that understanding could help better shape a treatment plan for the patient. You need to understand what the patient wants. Does the patient want to continue working? And what is possible to enable that patient to stay in work? It may not always be possible. It may be that they want to be able to play with their grandchildren or still continue some of their hobbies. But understanding those aspects is really important when it comes to shaping the care and support that a patient receives. And that's a really important topic that I think is really close to my heart, and I'm sure is to many of you here. So with those findings from the 2023 survey, we produced a report, but I think it's always really important that if you highlight problems and challenges, you also are prepared to advocate and make recommendations and solutions. So that's exactly what we did. We can share a code access to the report because it was quite lengthy and I don't intend to go through it. But one of the things that we were advocating for is the development of specialized networks. Scleroderma being a rare disease, you won't get a specialist center in your local hospital. And so you may have to travel hundreds of miles to reach a specialist. What we're advocating is for a low investment, support those specialist centres to be able to share their knowledge and expertise. That is a really simple, cost-effective way that we can make sure that people in outlying towns and villages have access to the best support. But we need to support those clinicians to do that. There's a great pilot that's happened in the UK. The funding has now run out, and what's happening is that those clinicians are doing it through goodwill. That's not sustainable, and there is strong evidence to show that it is a really effective way to make sure that patients are getting access to the best treatment and care, and that's our goal. That's our goal as FESCA, to make sure that patients are getting the gold standard therapy, no matter where they live in Europe. So our next speaker, I couldn't be a better person to address you. He is the Deputy Health Minister, Václav Plátenik, and I apologize if I've pronounced that incorrectly. What we have here is a man with extensive experience in healthcare, policy, and communications. So I'm delighted to ask you to come and speak about maybe what is happening in the Czech Republic to support patients with rare diseases.
Dear Sue, Michaela, Marco, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is a great pleasure to see you here in Prague and see that every one of you made it here to Prague yesterday or today, because I can imagine it wasn't easy through cars, trains, planes, what we call metro locally. But I shouldn't be too surprised that you all made it, because finding the right journey is what you people do, what you and people living with rare conditions are used to do every day. Right journey through the clinical assessment, but it's never just the healthcare. The journey often goes through social protection, education, work conditions, mental health, relationships, and family. It's by far not a straight journey. But I'm glad that your journey brought you here today, so we can navigate together. So on behalf of the Ministry of Health, it's with a great pleasure and honor to stand here before you as we commence the 8th Systemic Sclerosis Patient World Congress. I'm here to mention a couple of notes on behalf of our institutions. They are relevant for the Czech patients and the Czech public. But I would like to take it as an opportunity to share some inspiration and also hear something from you, what is the situation in your countries, and to convey a very important message here. So let me start. That the pressing need for comprehensive healthcare, the Czech Republic has actively engaged in the European reference networks. The multinational collaborations of specialized healthcare institutions focus on specific groups of rare diseases, such as systemic sclerosis, aiming to enhance access to high-quality care and ensure uniform standards across the EU member states. Let's bring us back to what Sue mentioned, because it shouldn't be your country of residence that determines your conditions or chances for gold standard care. This is also medical, scientific, organizational, finance issue, but it's, of course, a deep political issue. You guys pay taxes. You should have a voice. You should ask your people that you vote to secure the same conditions that are relevant and available in the rest of the world for you. I'm proud to share with you that the Czech Republic is fully integrated into 22 out of 24 existing European reference networks. Locally, that means 56 institutions in 13 healthcare providers in Prague, Brno, and Olomouc. It's actually very difficult to travel hundreds of miles locally in the Czech Republic because you will find yourself in Poland or Slovakia. But the network here is quite sufficient. But yes, there are still limitations and drawbacks on the way. We know that it's very difficult to reach some people that are living in the outskirts to have their first medical checkups. We know that their patient journey is longer than it should be in some cases. And we know, we have to admit, and we are admitting it, that it's different for patients to live in Prague and small villages where, for example, I come from in the South Moravia. But the idea of integration into the ERNs not only facilitates the access to expertise, but also fosters the knowledge sharing, professional training, and research initiatives vital for advancing and understanding treatment of systemic sclerosis. So once you get there, I think the chances are quite high that you're receiving the right care. But the journey is still sometimes too short, and it's also the role of the patient organization to advocate it, that we have to do more to shorten it. Apart from the network of centers, our commitment to addressing rare diseases is underscored by the ongoing project, which is called SIPOVO. All these projects always have different names. This is an initiative led by us, the Ministry of Health, and aims to enhance the quality and accessibility of comprehensive healthcare and social services for patients with rare diseases. This project comes from the pure frustration locally, because we saw that the medical institutions don't cooperate, the professionals, the professors don't always communicate, the different specializations of medical professions don't trust each other, that we know that once the patient is diagnosed with a rare condition, he is equally lost within the healthcare system as he is or she is in the social system. Making sure that your job conditions, social protection, education for your children is taken care of. It has been a mess for a long time. So that's why we invested in this project and tried to make sure that we come up with a plan how to integrate all those sectors together. As a result of this project, we aim at two goals. First, publishing our national strategy for rare diseases, which is currently outdated. And secondly, to nominate or establish a position called National Coordinator for Rare Diseases, which should be a senior position nominated by the ministry or the government, coordinating the medical, social, and societal spheres together. So a senior position, not a secretary, let's say. We also try to talk to patients as much as possible because we recognize the invaluable role they play in advocating for their needs, and their voice should be heard. That's why there is a patient council at our Ministry of Health as an official advisory body. Let me ask you, is there a patient council at your ministry in your countries as a regular advisory body at your Ministry of Health in your country? Raise your hand. Some of them, not really. In fact, in Czech Republic, it was the patients who came up that they want to be an ordinary official part of the ministerial advisory body. They came up, wanted to set up the patient council. So it took some time, of course. These things are never easy. But now it has been several years when the patient council officially sits at the ministry, they discuss the current topics, the ongoing legislation, and meet regularly with the minister. So it was the patient. So I urge you, why don't you come to your Ministry of Health and say that you want to establish your officially patient council at your ministry? It may not be easy, but patient organizations are now professionals in advocacy and communications. Let them try not to agree on something like that. And it works. And I invite the Revmaliga to present your research also on our patient council, the report, because I think it's super relevant. So as your Congress is about to start, I'm also glad that it brought you here to Prague. I understand that the situation may be very difficult in some cases, especially when the medical, social, education, work, relationship, and everything mixed together in some situations. And I know that the Ministry of Health in the Czech Republic and abroad isn't always the best partner, the most effective, but we're trying to do that. And we need your voice to do our work better. So no matter how difficult the journey is, we are here to navigate it with you, to go it with you. And that's the message I want to convey on the beginning of this Congress. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and it's really encouraging to hear what's happening in the Czech Republic, particularly that you will be revising the rare disease plan. This is something that at a European-wide level, there is a bit of a gap. So you are setting a final example here in the Czech Republic. And I think there's always something that we can learn from different countries. So the work that you're doing to bring the advocacy voice of the patient into your meetings is something that we can all learn from and use that as an example of best practice to share in other countries. So thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated. Our next speaker is Michaela Linková, who set up a patient group here in Prague in 2019. And Michaela has been quite amazing. She's been part of the conference planning group, and you will have seen, and if you haven't seen, please do go and look at the amazing art photographic exhibition, which I think in a very creative way conveys some of the challenges faced by our community. So thank you very much for bringing that with you. And I would like to invite you up to say a few words.
Thank you, Sue. Let me welcome everybody. I'm glad that you made it. You are in Prague finally. It's a pleasure for us to be host country. You know, when I was diagnosed in 2015, there was no patient organization, no patient group to support the patient with systemic scleroderma. It was very difficult to search for the information. So I'm really pleased that now we can be part of the Congress, the patient group Scleroderma Revma League organization. The patients in the Czech Republic are facing similar problems like in other countries, I would say. We have a lack of rheumatologists. Even more, we have lack of experienced rheumatologists with such a disease because it's a rare disease. There is a very often with early diagnosis, the patients are diagnosed late. Based to our survey, it took between 1 and 10 years, which is terrible, to be honest. It's very difficult to get, the support from the psychologists because, they are overloaded and there is no setup system in the system, the automatic psychological support for systemic scleroderma patients, like it's for oncology patients, for example. I think also for the patient, it's difficult to integrate into the working process. It's not easy always to get the state support in the form of pension, invalid pension. So all these things are not, the everything what I could mention here. It's a lot of other things, but I would point out these things. And that's why the patient organizations plays a big role in the support of the patient journey. And also the events like this, it's a great day for today. It's for you that you can get a lot of information, the best experiences from other patients, and together we can be involved and we can change the way how to treat the patient with systemic scleroderma. So thank you all that you are here. please enjoy the following 2 days, and I am sure that it will be beneficial for you and also for us as well, because we will teach from you and we will get your needs, your worries, your expectation, and we as a patient organizations, we will do our best to help you to improve your life.
Thank you, Michaela. We wouldn't have been able to really pull this together without your help, so you've been fantastic support. FESCA has always had a very strong working relationship with the World Scleroderma Foundation, so it gives me real pleasure to invite our next speaker up to the podium, Professor Marco Matucci, who is President of the World Scleroderma Foundation.
Thank you, Sue, Michaela, Václav, and dear friends. It's an honor to be here with you today, and it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure because this Congress has started, in my mind, a long time ago. When at the end of the 70s I started my profession, I did not dream to become a doctor devoting his life to scleroderma. But you know how it is. When you start, you never know at the beginning where you will go. And you are searching inside medicine, which is the area that could fit your preparation, your education. And then by chance, I arrived to scleroderma. And the chances have been twofold, because I was studying a completely different disease that was pachydermal periostosis, that is characterized by the growing of the skin. And so for comparative medicine at the beginning of the 80s, I thought, which is the disease that is exactly the opposite? And I realized it was scleroderma. So that's the reason why I started to look at scleroderma. And I understood that it is so fascinating because it's so challenging. It's complex, it's difficult, it's unpredictable. It's something that takes your breath away, because every time a patient sits in front of me, I have to understand not only what is the disease, I have to understand his future, because everything depends from the measurement I will be able to give and to understand how I must treat this patient. But I have to tell you that this was not the only reason. The other reason was derived from my family, because my father was a man of literature, and he exposed me from my youth and childhood to philosophers, to professors of literature, of different literature, European literature, Russian, French, English, German. And then, by chance, at the beginning of the early 80s, still almost at the same time when I was starting scleroderma, he showed me a book that were the memoirs of the hunter of Sergei Alexandrovich Turgenev, that is a Russian writer. And he gave me this because I was prepared already for all the others, much bigger writers, but he told me, just take a look to this. And by chance, one of the stories inside is the story, the most beautiful, I have to tell you. There is no writing in medicine that is so powerful, so interesting, so explicative, what means to be a scleroderma patient. And it is described in such a touching way that reading this and then starting to look at scleroderma, it was, in my mind, the beginning of a commitment. And the commitment was how to help, how to change the methodology we had, and how to create structures that will allow not me only, but all the others to be able to study and to be supported to study scleroderma. So that is the reason why we are together today. We are together today because we want to help each other. And who better than you can teach me? And this is a teaching that I give to my students: always listen. Because you study, you listen to professors, but then if you really want to understand, you must listen to the patient. Because the teacher number one for the coming life of doctor will be the patient. And you will learn from the patient a lot of things. So let him speak and try to understand. So that's the reason why we are together. And I had the pleasure to work with Sue in the last years. Unfortunately, starting from 2020, but it was very exciting. It was very exciting because we are on the same page. And I have to say that today, and we had also the opening yesterday, it's seeing you here, we can be happy, proud, and also we may say, for what concerns myself, I'm a lucky man because we are together. And being together is the most important thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marco. I think, as I said at the beginning, the partnership between the World Scleroderma Foundation and FESCA is a strong one and something that we can continue to build on and to do great work. And I'm sure that we will start to explore other opportunities. I would just like to say thank you very much to our speakers for coming to help us open the Patient Congress. The next session is a roundtable, which I flagged up earlier. I've spoke about the importance of collaboration across all stakeholders. So we will hear from some of our industry partners, along with patient representatives, about the power of the patient voice and why it's so important. But before we move on to that, a big thank you to our speakers.
When you're about to
Dobrý den. Dobrý den and good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here from all parts of the world. And also thank you to the Vice Ministry of Health that highlighted how many things must be done for the health of his citizens and of us, not just integrate the ERNs into the healthcare system, but it's just a good point. I don't think that many health ministries in Europe are aware of this, but also what Michaela said, about work is important, it's quality of life of patients. And today, with Annie Gilbert from Boehringer Ingelheim and Kristina Davidson from Amgen and Michael Oeschger from Germany, we'll try to have a look on why, not if, why the patient involvement in the development of clinical trials and new compounds, new medicine, is an added value, right? So let me introduce our speakers that in the meanwhile became friends. I've been knowing Annie since 2017, 16, right? And I have here is her bio. If you don't mind, I don't read it. She has a huge experience in the patient advocacy field. I love her. I hope there is no BI people here, because she's always by the patient side. So she tries to help us to bring and give voice to our needs. And I think that one thing is worth reading, because she recently published on BMJ Open, she's a co-author, a manuscript. You can read it, go into PubMed and type her name. Collaboration between patient organizations and a clinical research sponsor, so a pharmaceutical company, in a rare disease condition, ours. Learnings from a community advisory board, FESCA, and other patient organizations from China, North and South America. So learnings from a community advisory board and best practice for future collaborations. So this explains your past role and your actual role. Then from the US, we have Kristina. We met a couple of years ago in Brussels, let's say by chance, at a ERN meeting, Congress. And we start talking, finding it's easy for me to talk, and also for you, yeah. And we found some common interests, also beyond systemic sclerosis, because when you are a patient advocate, you really feel the need to help those in need, because we are very lucky. We have a very strong community. Here we are. We've been knowing each other for many years, but there are other rare diseases that are not so lucky. And so Kristina is like Annie. She's enthusiastic. She loves hearing what we need and try to help us creating and shaping projects, right? We are working also on other things beyond Scleroderma. And here we have Michael. I met him in 2016 during an advisory board. And let's say that it's important reading carefully his bio. Michael has been working as head of logistics until he was diagnosed with systemic sclerosis. He was 31. He had to cancel his career, resuming part-time after several years of treatment and an organ transplant. Engaging with the German Scleroderma Association, he served 10 years as a patient representative, advocating for awareness and improved healthcare. His journey epitomizes resilience, community engagement, and finding purpose amid personal challenges. So here you see that behind the patient there is a person with different background. So we should be considered as stakeholders, first because we have the experience of living with the condition or with someone who's living with the condition. But then we have different skills. We are persons that all together can really shape a puzzle, until you put the final piece, it's not done. So we are like a puzzle. Okay, so Annie, Kristina, and Michael, just a few minutes. Let me know why you right here today. Annie.
Well, hello everybody, and thank you so much to FESCA for inviting me to be part of this roundtable on a topic that is very, very close to my heart. I strongly believe in including the patient voice in every aspect of life cycle research and development for drugs. I do have a slide. Am I allowed to do that now?
I would have asked you. Thank you, yes.
So,
it will help us understanding also.
I have to do something clever here, so I just try to do it. Did I do it? Yes. Okay, so I'm Annie Gilbert. I'm a global patient and site engagement lead for Boehringer Ingelheim. And some of you in this room I have to thank for my job. Because in 2021, Boehringer Ingelheim had a global patient partnership summit. And what came up very loudly from the patients was we need to involve patient organizations, patient advisors in every single aspect of our drug development. So we formed a team of people that focus specifically on this. And I'm so lucky to be one of those people. So I've just, do I just go like that? Yes. Okay. Massive slide. Apologies. But what I wanted to talk about was that, so we can involve the patient voice in so many different parts and all aspects of the life cycle of a treatment, okay? But, and today, what I wanted to focus on was just the 4 arrows in the middle of this slide. So don't worry, I'm not going to be going through each part of it. So this is a practical roadmap provided very kindly by Upati, who we collaborate very closely with. And we aspire to do everything that's in this roadmap, okay? So focusing on those 4 arrows in the center, the research priorities, it's absolutely crucial that we understand the unmet need so that when we're developing our treatments, they address those needs. If we don't know what they are, then we're not going to do very well at all, are we? So that's really important right at the beginning. It's absolutely important that we have relevant endpoints and that we look after our patients. We provide comfortable trials. We provide those practical considerations, so offering travel expenses or reimbursing caregivers for their time. The list goes on. And then when it comes to the conduct and operations of the trial, we definitely need your help with our trial communications and putting together a lay summary that makes sense. We literally cannot do that without you guys, and I know that for certain. And then finally, the dissemination and communication and post-approval. We have to include the patient voice in our regulatory conversations and our healthcare technology assessment documents. And I don't actually work in that final aspect, but I have a huge global patient engagement team. There's 15 of colleagues that work from Ingelheim in Germany. And we have over 55 patient advocacy relations specialists that work in all of our countries across the globe. So to just conclude this little introduction, we aspire to follow this, okay, this roadmap. We're not quite there yet, I'll be honest with you. We have challenges that we face, particularly making sure it's about timing. That's what my big challenge is, making sure I have the right input at the right time from the right advisor. And trial timelines actually change quite a lot, quite often. But we're getting there, okay? And I will tell you that my goals in my team is that 100% of our trials have patient and site input. So thank you very much for inviting me here today, and I'm looking forward to the questions.
Thank you, Anna. Now, Kristina.
Well, I have to say, I agree with everything that she said. And also, I've met some of your patient engagement team, and you're amazing. I am with Amgen Rare Diseases, formerly with a little company called Horizon Therapeutics. And in my career, it's about 30 years. I just did the math while I was sitting down. I started in working in agencies that work with pharmaceutical companies. And I'd always kind of say, okay, what about the person living with the disease? What about the patient? I thought it was really intuitive. I thought it made a lot of sense. But I've spent a lot of my career fighting to include the patient voice in everything that we do. I think it's really important for small companies, large companies, to model that behavior also. You don't have to have 55 folks on the ground, although we really need them. We really need them. And even more, it can, simply start with engaging with a person living with that condition or engaging with a community. I feel really strongly, and I'm so happy that regulators are holding us responsible as industry to include the patient voice. We need to start measuring that. So about 6 or 7 years ago, because in patient advocacy, we all like to talk to each other and share what we're doing and sharing our ideas. There was a gentleman whose name is Mike Boudleau. He actually worked in clinical research for BioMarin, and he really thought, including the patient voice really early on, protocol development, it's going to help us. But with researchers and, timelines, including more players, including more, it just, gave people a little bit of pause. Like, we do not have time to engage more people in this process. And what he said about doing is saying, okay, I'm working with scientists. Let's measure this. Let's create a very simple metric system to get a baseline of where we are. And then it was simple, 0 to 5. 0, you have no patient involvement whatsoever. Down to 5, you're co-creating. You're co-creating and you're working from the very beginning. So I really, encourage us to start thinking about that, to always include the patient voice from really early on, and also to collaborate with our other industry partners and find new ways to get over those barriers, the timing barriers, the regulatory barriers, the global barriers. In rare disease, these diseases are global, but in different countries, there are different regulations on how we can include the patient voice. So I'm really excited to not only be here, but also to learn from you and to share ideas on this roundtable.
Thank you, Kristina. Thank you very much. Michael, please.
Thank you, Ilaria. I want to come back to your question, why I'm here in this session. Well, the short answer is because you asked me to. And the long answer is, as we met, as you already mentioned, in 2016, it was also a World Scleroderma Congress in Lisbon. And that was the very moment we started working together with Ingelheim and with pharmacy in order to integrate patients in the development and into the medical studies. So I have been involved from the very beginning. I remember the room we were sitting in.
Me too.
With like, I don't know, 8 people perhaps in a very large room. And we have been discussing how to start this project and how to get into this, this event. Yeah, I would call it an event. So I don't have slides, but I have a statement prepared, which I would like to present now.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes. And I would ask if we could keep the slide of the life cycle of the drug, because it could be useful for our discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, it fits quite good, I think. So I'm delighted to speak to you today on a topic that is of paramount importance as well for patients as for pharmaceutical and industry, and as well for the medical profession. It is about the importance of early involvement of patients with rare diseases in the medical research. There are over 6,000 rare diseases, and Scleroderma is just one of them. So each individual rare disease affects only a few people in relation to the overall population, but a total of at least 26 to 30 million people in Europe suffer from these diseases. So this is a huge amount, and there is a huge potential in this amount. Rare diseases pose a particular challenge for the healthcare system. They often manifest in childhood. This is different in Scleroderma. But we also have the juvenile SSC, as you know. They frequently lead to a significant reduction of life expectancy. And they typically follow a chronic course, which causes high costs in the health system, and of course, a substantial impact on quality of life in patients. So therefore, urgent further research efforts in the field of rare diseases are needed to better understanding of prevention, diagnosis, and treatment. Research in this area of rare diseases is hindered by the lack of resources at various levels. So first of all, there are few researchers dedicated to each individual disease, of course. This impression luckily disappears when you come to this Congress here, which has over the years developed significantly. And yesterday I spoke to a clinician, and he told me this Congress, a Congress like this, where patients and physicians come together, is unique in the field of rare disease. So we can be proud of this Congress that we have here. The few patients are geographically dispersed and make it difficult to assemble meaningful cohort studies. Existing databases are limited in scope, and respective diseases profiles often exhibit a highly complex clinical phenotype that makes it complicated to research. So why should patients with rare diseases be involved from the outset in research? Let me provide you with some important reasons to do so. When patients are involved in medical research, everyone benefits. Those affected, meaning the patients, can influence what and how research is carried out, and researchers can focus more on actual needs. The most important goal of medical research is to prevent diseases, find new and better ways to diagnose and treat them, and thus improve people's lives and health. New procedures for prevention, diagnosis, and treatments, innovative products, and advances in digitalization find their way from research into everyday health care all the faster if they are also in line with the wishes of the target groups. So, early involvement of patients allows for a better understanding of the disease. Patients with rare diseases often have years, sometimes even decades of experience with their diseases. and with their condition, and they can provide valuable insights into their symptoms, the treatment methods they have experienced, and the disease progression. Their knowledge can help researchers better understand the disease and identify suitable approaches for therapy development. Patients should be able to contribute their experiences, wishes, and needs directly to the research progress, from the formulation of research needs through project planning and implementation to the dissemination of results. So finally, patient involvement also strengthens the patient community. Participating in research activities can provide patients with rare diseases with an opportunity to engage and voice their opinions. This strengthens the patient community, enabling them to actively participate in decisions affecting their health. But, let me close with this, the involvement of patients, often medical laypersons, requires a cultural change. Scientists may have to be prepared to change established research procedures. Those affected may have to be given workshops or trainings to enable them to make full use of the range of opportunities for participation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. So, before starting our conversation, please, can you go back to the previous slide, please? The title of the... it's you!
Yeah, I did it.
Sorry.
Do you want me to go back to the title?
Just one moment, and then I need this.
I'm so sorry. I'm so keen.
So you see, the collaboration with pharma is very good. So there are 3 words very important in the title. Patient organization, because patients that join advisory boards with pharmaceutical company need to have a community behind. They don't need to represent themselves, but they have to represent the whole population with different problems. If I talked about my own experience, I would ignore, for example, digital ulcers, because luckily I'm not affected, or very rarely. So living within a patient organization allows me to bring all the aspects of the disease. And then we have engagement. It's important to really engage the patient organizations, not just invite them to say, okay, we've done this in a tokenism way. You really need to hear, learn, listen, and then do what you have learned from us. Thank you. Can I have the following slide, please? So you see the whole life cycle of a drug and where patients should be involved. A little out of the screen on the left side. When the pharmaceutical company has the idea to develop a compound on a specific disease due to the experience they gather in previous clinical trials, or because of the people working in the company, because of their expertise, should understand which are our needs, our burning needs. Could be lung involvement, could be digital ulcers, or could be fatigue as well. So engage them collecting the unmet needs. But also in the design of the protocol, we can give you inputs for endpoints, for outcomes it comes to my mind the example of Duchenne disease. Duchenne disease is a neuromuscular disease affecting children, and remaining set on a chair can be hard, difficult. And the design of the protocol had as an endpoint the improvement of the 6-minute walking test. It means that the baby had to walk as many meters as possible in 6 minutes. And the patient organization said, listen, this is not possible. If they could walk 6 seconds, we would be very happy. And so the patient organizations all together made the protocol to be amended and changed. So this is the power of patients' organizations. And, but we also give you a better idea on the exclusion and inclusion criteria, because it's not easy to find patients for the rare disease, not easy if different clinical trials are investigating the same organ, for instance. And so we can help you also to identify inclusion-exclusion criteria, always keeping in mind the safety, which is for all of us, patients, regulatory bodies, pharmaceutical company, the main objective, even more important than the efficacy of the drug. And anybody joined a clinical trial? No one. Otherwise, Otherwise, you would have experienced a very tricky situation, which is the informed consent. So to join a clinical trial, you have to give your consent, and you receive some papers, you read them and understand nothing, but you have to sign it and say, yes, I understood. Yes, I know I have the right to ask questions, to stop being part of the trial whenever I want, without giving justifications, without detriment on my medical care. But really, I understand you have to do it for your legal compliance, but together we could do it easier. For pediatric condition, we experience also scratches, infographics, because the person that joins really need to understand what is going to do. And by the way, I didn't tell which is recruited, enrolled, cohort, because this is an old terminology where patients were meant like soldiers to be enrolled, recruited in a cohort. I prefer to say to join or participate a trial. Sometimes I use the old terminology, but it's a form that becomes substance. So now I would like to ask my first question to Annie. You spoke that you are not part of the last arrow. So what kind of activity do you run before the trial design, and which activity is most time consuming for you?
Okay, so this is the first arrow, the blue arrow, research priorities. What we do is we develop something called an evidence plan, okay? And this is done right at the beginning, at start of development. And there's lots of information that goes into this evidence plan. And I talked about my goals and what I measured on, and one of the measurements is that patient insights are included into this evidence plan. So we're already, and this is all about the unmet need. This is about those gaps in analysis. Why are we developing a treatment? What will it do? How will it help? We also have PED, patient experience.
We will talk about this later.
But that's included in the evidence plan as well. So there's a lot of, we call it front loading. So it's doing a lot of preparation work before we even get our draft trial design. And there is one other thing that we do include, which I'm a little bit off topic, I hope you don't mind.
Oh, no problem.
And that is about diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is also now being included in our evidence plans from 2024. And when I'm looking at advisory boards to help me with this evidence plan, with our trial designs, I need representatives from those underrepresented communities to be part of the board.
We also need this, and this is why I personally believe that hybrid clinical trials would be an opportunity, because are different kind of trials where patients have to drive to the investigator centers at the beginning every month, every 2 months, 3, 6, and it's burdensome. With hybrid trials, some procedures can be made at home. And I mean, if we consider a scleroderma patient that has to travel in winter with snow, cold temperature, just to make a breath test and some blood tests that can be done at home. Well, in this way, you can reach people everywhere. And diversity, also racial diversity, would bring more robust data for the statistical analysis.
Absolutely, and this is absolutely crucial. If we don't conduct our clinical trials and have people that are part of the trial, trying not to say those words, recruited, very important. In fact, Ilaria taught me that about 2 years ago, do not say the word recruit. So I'm training the whole of BI, Boehringer Ingelheim, to not say the word recruit or subject, and there's many other terms that they use. Sorry, going back, the other thing that you asked me about was challenges, Ilaria, so I wanted to just touch on that, if that's okay. So the big challenge we have, like I said, was the timing. So we often will be planning a trial at risk. So we'll be planning a big phase 3 and we still don't have the results of the phase 2. That's the only way we can do it in order to, as soon as we get those results, move in to the phase 3, which is the bigger, larger trial where we submit for our license for the treatment. So having the right advisors contracting is still a challenge, not because the process is the challenge. The process is very clear. We have very robust legal and compliance frameworks, but it still takes 8 weeks. And I'm trying to bring that down to more like 4 to 6 weeks, but at the moment it's still 8 weeks. Did I answer everything?
Yes, you did. Kristina, preparing this roundtable, I went through the literature, and if all pharmaceutical companies, sponsors, think that involving patients' organization is important, needed, and crucial, nonetheless, they think that this involvement should be measured to understand better the engagement. Are you working on this? Do you already mind some KPIs, key performance indicators?
So as I mentioned in my intro, this has been a passion for me, but as my career has, in the beginning, when we were looking at how to measure that patient voice, I was working in clinical trials. As always happens, little companies get bought by bigger companies, and I moved away from clinical trials for a little while. Looking back, and then coming back into the rare disease space, I saw really nothing much has changed in those 7 years. So I re-engaged on those metrics. And just to mention the project that this gentleman, Mike Boudeleau, who's no longer at BioMarin, but is still in clinical development, what he proved by his first kind of, well, let's start with the baseline and then measure patient engagement from early on, right in the research priorities section. It's not meant to, say, hey, we're doing a really bad job. It's like, how are we doing and how can we improve? What he proved with the first pilot is that they enrolled, first of all, the protocol amendments went through with less changes. It was a quicker process. They enrolled people into the clinical study more quickly, saved time, and got this therapy to market even sooner. So that's why I'm not passionate about, proving externally that this is the right thing to do. For me, it's internally really getting that through. You said you are trying in every aspect, even changing the way you speak about the trial. It does take a long time. I love working for little companies because you can kind of move things along. I am now, a couple of months into a larger company, and the desire is there to include the patient voice. I'm feeling the contracting pain. In a smaller company, we're able to quickly jump on things. There's an opportunity, we can take advantage of the opportunity. It is definitely a challenge in larger companies. And one of the things I think we need to do as an industry, and all of you need to hold us accountable, is rare disease is very different. As larger pharma companies are incorporating rare disease compounds in other companies, we need to help them, those folks that have done this in rare disease, and know we can legally, compliantly move faster. We have to find ways to do that. I have to say, I am following you. What you guys are doing is a model that I'm trying to incorporate into Amgen Rare Diseases, and people are listening. Thank you for telling me how many people you have on the street, because we are far away from that. So that's why I'm passionate about measuring, because unfortunately, we can talk and talk, but until you show evidence, things typically don't change.
Yeah, so before giving the floor to Michael, in 2011, EULAR, the European Society for Rheumatology, stated that for clinical research, at least 2 patients had to be represented. Do you think that it's enough, that you are doing your best, that something more should be done to include what matter for us, quality of life, fatigue, insomnia, and these kind of things?
Anything's a start, but no, it's definitely not enough. And you kind of talking about it's important to engage the patient community and the patient advocacy organizations. Absolutely. Sometimes, though, there are diseases that don't have an advocacy organization. So looking at other ways to include the patient voice, patient advisory panels, they're pretty typical. Hopefully, they will be kind of across all of industry, but that's another way. Even engaging with we always engage with the patient organization to recommend folks that they think are really good for the advisory committee, and having diverse voices. Really, all of kind of the perspectives that we can get. There's a lot of ways that pharma gets patient and insights, and we need to just expand that to talking to one person, having advisory panels. I have a vision. You don't know this yet. I'm just going to say it and watch your face. We work in a lot of rare autoimmune and autoinflammatory conditions. I applaud the European community for all of these rare disease, the ERNs, the European Reference Networks, coming together and raising the voice. What I'd really love to see, and I'm working on it, is to have an overall, global advisory panel with representatives from not only ERN, but the United States, everywhere, so that we can really understand rare autoimmune, autoinflammatory conditions and elevate this whole community. So there are challenges and barriers with that, so we'll see if that can happen by the next meeting.
We talked about this yesterday morning at 7:30, right? So, Michael, when we met, you were helping in a phase 3 trial. Getting back in time, do you think you would have suggestion if you would been recruited before, so in phase 2 or in the design of the protocol?
Yes, so as you said, I've been involved not as a patient, but as a patient representative in a phase 3 study, so I didn't have to take a medicine, but I helped to develop many things for this phase 3 study. So we discussed, for example, about how to approach the study centers, how to roll out the information to the patients, to the participants. We discussed about making flyers, information about side effects, and so on. And I think there was even a video being made. So these were all wonderful things. And I think that my input and also the input of all the other patients was crucial to develop this study from phase 3. But the study design itself, it was already fixed, and it's not changeable at that point of time. So I think that the input of patients in an earlier stage would be very useful. Because there are certain advantages. No, I have to get that different. In my opinion, patients should be involved from the outset of the research, so from the very beginning, because what kind of medicine do patients actually wish is the question. What are their biggest problems and what are their worst struggles? So that's where we should start with the development of treatments. And as I already told you, patients with rare diseases have passed a certain time experiencing their own disease even without a diagnosis. So they know best what happens in their body. They know the so-called early warning signs and many informations more. And there are more advantages of involving patients early. So, for example, the recognition, even in the study design, of the diversity of the patients. As we know that Scleroderma is a very individual disease, and patients having Scleroderma are very diverse. So including these informations in the study design even, I think would bring a massive advantage. And on the other hand, the patient compliance in a study is also very important. As we know, there are, so the pharmaceutical company is, I know I shouldn't say it, but they're recruiting patients. So, and then you have a certain amount of patients available for this study, and patients sometimes tend to drop out of several reasons. Medical reasons, of course, there's no other choice, but there are also personal reasons or maybe reasons of tolerance. Many patients are not able to handle uncertain situations, for example, because having a rare disease is an uncertain situation within itself already. And then you participate in a study, which is again kind of an uncertain situation, because you don't know, will I get the drug or the placebo? If I get the drug, will it help me or will it not? So there are many uncertain situations accumulating in the patient's life. And this affects, of course, the compliance. And I think that when you involve patients in an earlier state, when they can bring their inputs from the beginning, the compliance will get better and the drop-offs maybe will be less. Yeah. So, and last but not least, when you involve patients from the very beginning, you are able to identify the potential benefits better. So I'm talking about individual therapy, as individual as scleroderma is, as individual the therapy should be. And when you involve patients before the study design, I think that this could be realized in a better way than it is now. Yeah.
Thank you. But you guys made me be a bad moderator because it was so interesting and I didn't check the time, so we have 10 minutes. Very quickly, now, patient experience data. EMA wants to capture this data more and more, and the patient-focused medicine development developed a tool to add clarity and structure to understand the generation, use, and interpretation of patient experience data. And you cannot have patient experience data if patient engagement has not taken place, right? So, Michael, according to the definition that FDA gives of patient experience data, who refers to symptoms, impact of the condition on functioning, on quality of life, on preference of treatments, which outcomes are important to patient preference and therapies. Do you believe that this is the right way to proceed, collecting this kind of data, which are not clinical data, but experience data?
So, generally spoken, I think that this is the right way to proceed, but I have to add several things to that. I've taken a look just yesterday into the paper of the FDA, how they wrote it exactly and how exactly the expressions are in the text. And I found out that they made a very broad definition of patient data themselves. They made a broad definition of who can gather patient data, and they made a very broad definition of how to gather patient data. So this is basically a good thing, because I think that the wording is anybody can provide patient data, and any patient data are valuable. So, and they give a few examples, but it is widely open. So the good thing of this broad definition is that we can bring in patient data as many as we want. We can make as many wishes as we want. That is the good side. But the other side of a broad definition is you have to define later, when you assess these patient data, you have to be aware that maybe persons or organizations without enough experience brought up this data. So you have to sort them out. You have to define who is this any persons and what are this any data. So I think that with this paper of the FDA, it is a good start, but afterwards you have to be very aware of the quality of these data collected. So when you figure them out, when you assess them, you have to take a good look and be very careful with this data.
Yes, this is the conditio sine qua non. Data must be reliable, real-world data, patient experience data. Now we have the new European health data space. Maybe can help in this. For sure, will add further bureaucracy. But do you have any idea on how to embed these PEDs in clinical trials, in the design or of the protocol?
So at Boehringer at Ingelheim, we incorporate this data in this evidence plan. So this first plan that we write right at the start of development. And that's the way that it can then be incorporated into the design, because in that evidence plan, we have something called a study synopsis, which is the kind of description of the study. And this is where the data can come in. The more we have in this evidence plan, the better we are as we move through working on the actual trial. So this evidence plan is becoming more and more important. The only other thing I wanted to say about the patient experience data, this information, is it does also inform our plans much later on. So once we've had a successful trial and we're submitting information to our regulators, this is when this information is also used.
Thank you, Annie. And the combination of patient experience data, patient engagement is crucial for the following step.
Exactly.
For the HTA, after the regulatory body approve the drug. So health technology assessment is a multidisciplinary and multidimensional way to, let's say, give a value to a new health procedure. Could be a device, could be a compound. So
also, Ilaria, can I just say?
Sure.
That the colleagues that work on the PEDs, the patient experience data documents, work really closely with our healthcare evidence outcomes research, HEOR, Healthcare Evidence Outcomes Research Group. This is a group of incredibly clever people. And that's why we know that what's contained in these documents is absolutely robust and accurate.
Thank you. So let's fly to the US because the FDA...
I like it here better.
In 2023, held a meeting with different stakeholders to provide guidance to foster systematic collection of patient input for research and development, HTA, and regulatory bodies. So, what's your point about this? Are patients in the US really involved in all these processes?
Again, it's a start. It is a start, but it's not good enough. One of the things about, the richness or where we can get these data is changing. One of the things that we have started doing is working with AI and machine learning. We know that there are major gaps in the medical literature in rare diseases, major, even about the natural history of a disease. We also know that on social media, in closed Facebook groups, sometimes open forums, patients, their care partners are talking about their real world experience that oftentimes never makes it to medical literature. And so through machine learning and training of an engine, we partner with an organization that has created an ethical framework to go into closed social media groups and use your conversations, your lived experiences, and turn that into data that the EMEA, that the FDA accepts. And we partner with patient communities to get those posters, presentations at medical meetings. We've had, and it's interesting what bubbles up, mental health is a huge issue across so many disease states. And so those are the kinds of endpoints that we're trying to add into the trial. But also when we're getting out there and with patient organizations standing in front of the physicians and talking about this in a poster or a presentation, it just becomes easier because it's your experiences that are actually validated. So I think that's really exciting, and I think there'll be more ways to engage with people with diseases, with their care partners, to understand, not only lived experiences, but, the ramifications of the disease. Just a quick story. The person that started this organization about 10 years ago had a daughter with a rare disease. It's called Prader-Willi syndrome. Her and her husband were in medical publishing, so they went right into PubMed and started searching. And basically, it was take your daughter home. This disease is characterized by something called hyperphagia, which is chronic insatiable hunger. Take your daughter home. Eventually, you're going to have to lock up your trash cans and your cabinets, because even children with this disease with a normal IQ will eat themselves to death. So, of course, she went home and was devastated until she joined a closed Facebook group for parents caring with children with Prader-Willi syndrome, and a whole possibility opened up for her daughter. Then comes 21st Century Cures Act, where FDA demanded that we start including the patient voice, and that's when the whole trajectory of the company changed, and they started to try to make those patient lived experiences into real data. In the Prader-Willi groups, they were discovering that a lot of parents were talking about their kids head bobbing, faking falling asleep. Long story short, they were able to use AI and machine learning to get a differential diagnosis for their daughter of narcolepsy. Now narcolepsy in Prader-Willi syndrome is pretty well known, and that was from a mom with a daughter who had this disease, super powerful, and even more so, they encouraged a pharmaceutical company that had just brought a therapy to market for narcolepsy to do a study in Prader-Willi syndrome so they could get access to that medicine. So things are changing for the better. It will take time. My main message is always hold us accountable. Let us know, I love you for many reasons, but mostly it's because you tell me true and directly. The things that you have shared and that your other folks in advocacy have shared with us has changed the trajectory of how we do business. So oftentimes it's not, doing the right thing, sometimes isn't right for business. Doing the right thing here is absolutely, it helps all of us.
Thank you. We run over time. Thank you very much. I just ask you, and also the other representatives of pharmaceutical companies, we want all data published, not only for trials that succeed, but also for trials that failed, because you used data belonging to patients, and they need to know if the trial failed, the reason. We need to know, but also you need to know why those data failed. So there are some good examples. Some pharmaceutical company publish on scientific journal this data. We really need you to do the same and to ensure to the patient that joined the trial to have access to the drug until her healthcare system reimburses the drug. This, in my opinion, should be a condition for a collaboration. So, after saying that, thank you, Annie. Thank you, Kristina. Thank you, Michael, for such an interesting conversation. And thanks to you. Unfortunately, no time for questions, but I hope next time we will have 2 hours, okay? Or 3. Or 3. Thank you.